Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back to the Shaky Hands Workshop. I'm Brian, if you're new here. Today we'll be starting part 3 of the sewer systems. This will be the more modernized version of the sewers for the city of Bordertown, which is my main adventuring city. The city itself, in the last, I'd say 30 years or so, sunk a lot of money into its infrastructure and sanitation, and part of that is they hired in the dwarven masons to execute that type of work. So my idea was for this prototype piece for future terrain pieces was to give on the top layer a brick-like consistency, meaning that instead of having 6mm or 1/4-inch wide spacings between the blocks, I would have 3mm wide, and that would give a more brick-like pattern. This will be a simple affair. The addition to this is I'll be adding a bridge to it, and I've done a rough sketch of what the bridge to look like. It'll be nothing super fancy, but it'll be a bridge. And the other thing too is when I'm doing this terrain, I keep thinking of playability. How many figures can I move across? How many characters can I get into combat with this? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my base cut out, and then I will come back once I got that cut out and get my walkways also cut out. Now also too, with these bases, they're going to be a little bit bigger than my previous two. Those were ideally a 6x6. With the fact that I want this terrain to show more expanse and all that, the overall length is only 6 inches. But the width of this is about 10 inches because I wanted a 4-inch gap between, a 4 to 5 inch gap between one walkway and the other, because there's 2 walkways all in this newer sewer system. And so every so often I'll have a bridge connecting the 2 sides along with T intersections and all of that. Those will be forthcoming in upcoming videos as well. I do apologize, by the way, for a little late getting this video out. I just had knee surgery on Monday, so this is the first day I've been conscious without the benefits of pain medication. So this will be interesting because I still got some of that stuff running in my system. Without rambling on too much more, I'm going to turn around and get some material cut out. I'll turn the camera down, and then hopefully without too much longer, I'll get this thing all put together. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Hey there. So I've got my bridge cut out. The bridge is around 4 centimeters wide. I wanted a couple of wanted to have either one large miniature on a 40mm base to be able to stand on this, or have 2 dwarven sized 20mm bases on here, or a combination thereof. And this is the 4 inches wide, and yeah, it's about 1 inch tall. I'm going to do my brickwork up on top, on the very top. I'm going to do those 3mm lines like I did over here on the walkways. So I continue that look from there to here, and then I'm going to do the bigger 5mm lines in here, and that'll kind of really tie everything together. Originally, I'm going to carry some of the stone look through a little bit. Not so much worried about the top, maybe on the sides right here, on the archways and stuff, but there's no point in going really above where it goes into what I would consider going into black. So I'll just paint those black and maybe carry a little bit of stonework, which you might be able to see, but not by much. unless you're holding up the terrain piece and eyeballing underneath of there, but even then you're not going to have that great of a vantage point. I went ahead and cut this on my Proxxon, used a graph paper template to cut it, and then went through and put a mask on and sanded this down with some 220 grit sandpaper, and then used some alcohol and paper towel to get all the extra dust and stuff. I'm trying to not have some type of crystalline formations in my chest as I get older. Lord knows I've done enough of that crap already by not paying attention. That's probably the best way. That's probably the nicest way to put it. Let's put it that way. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing laid out. And then once I get this thing all laid out and stoned and stuff, and then get it covered in Mod Podge, I'm going to hit all the stones with Army Painter's skeleton bone. Apparently I had an extra can of this stuff, and instead of trying to cover black primer with a craft paint, I'm going to offer something a little nicer. Hopefully it'll be easier to cover than the black primer will be. Sorry about that. I may even I've got some extra normal Vallejo paints or Army Painter paints. I may just dig into those just because I've got those. But we'll see how the mood strikes. Anyway, I'm gonna get to moving, and I will be back here in a little bit. Okay, so I've got everything all primed. I'm going to go through and hit all the big foundation stones with a pewter gray. I've already started doing that on the bridge. So I'll do the pewter gray, and then on the top I'm going to do a dominant color of this, where'd it go? Yeah, here it is, the Pennsylvania clay. I'm not even sure if they make this particular brand, but kind of think of like it's like a dirty red. It's probably the best way I can put it. Something that's got a lot of the diffusion to it and stuff. But yeah, this is I can't honestly tell you how long I've had this paint, and I've had this probably for 10 years at least, maybe longer. I think I was actually given this paint. Same with this red iron oxide. And I'm going to probably add a little bit of black to this to show some differentials in some of the brickwork. So these are going to be my brick colors, my main brick colors. Probably play in, maybe add a little bit of tone, just get an occasional brick that's like a dark, almost like a black red color, or even a brown red. I'm sure you've seen some of those on some brick buildings. There's variation in the colors and stuff, for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that is, but and on the actual foundation stones, my base color is going to be pewter gray. This is like a default color to me. I'll use this as my primary, and then I'm going to use to keep it semi-simple, using tan and a suede color. Basically, like how you can even use a khaki color. Depending upon the paint you're using, that khaki may have a greenish tint to it, and that works. I might use some sandstone. I was thinking about using these, mixing the cinnamon and ochre yellow as the foundation color for my my actual sewage area. I may have to add in some espresso or some burnt umber or something like that to kind of give it some more depth. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I had thought about using some terracotta, but again, we'll kind of go along and see how this looks, and if feels like it needs a little more color to make it a little more interesting, then probably start popping in some other colors and stuff. But my primary three are going to be these three, and then but since it's subsurface, I'm kind of leaning more to this. If I was doing some brickwork on the surface, I'd add probably another color, maybe 2, depending upon the look I'm going for. Like if it's some fieldstone building and stuff, they're going to get a little more variation, I think, without getting too wrapped around the axle about, you know, geography and all that stuff that I don't understand. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and I've got my colors set. This is still going to be a work in play, so we'll probably go over that a little bit more here in a little bit. And yeah, so for right now, I'm going to set this down and get my base colors in, and then I will be back with you guys here in a little bit. And the most boring thing I think for people to do is sit here and watch somebody else paint. And so there we go. There's our base colors. I like the way that Pennsylvania clay looks. It's got that nice red brick color to it. Got my base color for my foundation stones. The back wall I'm keeping with the same color as my foundation stones. And I even went with a more fitted and cut sequence. Just as kind of a quick go over, I try to keep the spacing about 3 millimeters apart on the brickwork. Oh my God, is that tedious? That is so tedious. But the overall effect, I think, should turn out pretty good. These I kept at about 5 millimeters apart, or 5 to 6, and that's going to give you your 1/4 inch. This is about as near as my knuckle counting gorilla math can work it out. But right now, I'm just going to wait for the stuff to dry, probably hit it with a hair dryer, and then move on to picking up individual stones and make it look nice. Actually, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and start playing around with my base. And I went ahead and wiped this down with a little bit of IPA. I'm going to get this clean this again. I have found that the PVC does have like some oils to it. I'd rather hit this with IPA than I would hit it with sandpaper, just because I don't want any fine particulates in the air. And I wear a mask, and we all wear a mask enough as it is right now. So I'll give this a run, see how it does overall. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get that thing wiped down and start playing around with my effluvia color. That's probably the best way to put it. Let's try this again. So originally I was not going to do a dark brown base color, but I got to thinking that with the previous tiles that I've done in the old system and the transitionary, or parts 1 and 2, if you haven't seen those, please take a look at those. I'm going to go ahead and continue on with that main color, but what I've done is I've done a 50-50 mix approximately of the cinnamon and this espresso color, and I'm going to do that as kind of a dry brush, I guess. Kind of move it more towards the sides and leave some depth on the towards the center as much as I can. May have to go back and touch it up a little bit. And that's given me, yeah, that's given me what I was kind of looking for right there. And I'm going to have to go back, whereas this type of paint is so thin. Have to go back and give it another coat or so down the middle. Try not make it look straight, but give it some variation, maybe some wiggle or something like that. Because it just wouldn't look that natural, I don't think. Yeah. And we'll just kind of go like that. And this, I got these hard lines on the sides. That's where my foundation is going to go. So, and that's kind of what I'm shooting for, is something like that. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit more and see how she turns out. But overall, I like the espresso and the cinnamon color. Again, this is just stuff I have on hand, and this the paint I'm willing to use. I'm not willing to, for terrain, especially for a large amount of terrain, I don't want to use like Vallejo paints and stuff for that, because it's just not cost effective. If you want better volume for your money, then you should look at interior latex paints, house paints. Maybe even find some mist tints and stuff at your local hardware store or something like that. And I've used those. I use those actually on terrain boards, the larger ones, and instead of using the craft paint, because it's cheaper. And that's, you know, I'm not willing, while I love making terrain and stuff, I'm not willing to sink a small fortune into doing that. So that's just, you know, for me, that's the path I choose. But anyway, I'm going to get this thing dry and work this up a little bit more, and a little status update, such as it is. I've got my base set. I found some little bits in my bits box through like a little skeleton or spine here. I think that's from a Tyranid. A barrel, piece of weapon, a skull, a bag from an ogre. It's got a bunch of bones and stuff in it. And yeah, I think overall that it'll add a little visual interest, kind of like what you might expect to find in a sewer anyway. And I've gone through and dry brushed a mixture of wicker white and this suede color to kind of offset the brightness of it a little bit. And then I'm going to go through and black wash all this stuff. And then I'm going to mount these. But yeah, right now it's just I've got the bridge done. I've got this other side done. And the work in progress look is going to be something like that. And right now I'm just going to finish up this last one. Dry brushing was actually one of the first techniques I ever mastered-ish, where it took me, I've screwed this up I don't know how many times, but it's just a matter of dabbing off as much paint as you possibly can. Lately I've taken to, you know, I've seen people use their hands and stuff as like a final check, and I've been doing that as well. And that's actually saved me from having to repaint some stuff a few times. But since I just moved back out here from being stuck in my bedroom for the past week, finally got some of my stuff rearranged a little bit, and spent most of last night getting things rearranged, and got my table all set back up, and got my painting desk all set back up. The important thing is not to be heavy-handed with this stuff. I've got big heavy hands, and I can't tell you how many times it went from a dry brush to an overbrush to a base coat, like that. I mean, it was just so quick. It was just not even, it was beyond belief for me. But and after creating a hole in the ozone with some swearing, I had to back up and start over. Sometimes it's just not worth it for me. I'll just, you know what, set it off to the side, I'll strip it later and move on to something else and come back to it when I'm less emotional. And yeah, I mean, this nice dry brushing before the wash actually helps out quite a bit, kind of brings some definition back to the stones and such, so you can see where the stone pattern is and the like. And I'll just get this side right here. Alright, well, here we go. I got it all set up, ready to go. I'm going to do a resin pour, well actually an epoxy pour. I had this kicking around my desk for a little while, so I figured I'd give this a shot. Hopefully it won't do anything weird aside from mix and dry. And I'm going to tint this with a bit of, that's not it. I'm going to tint this with a bit of sepia ink, and that should complement the other colors I have underneath of it, and kind of give it that murky quality that I'm looking for. All right, a little lesson learned while I'm waiting for this thing to finish curing. I think for me, I will stay with the 2-part resin epoxies. At least those I have an idea of volume and all that. I did my initial pour with the Gorilla stuff, and this doesn't have the quite of the depth of the pour that I was actually looking for. And so I've just decided to call it good, and we'll see what it looks okay for what I've got done so far, but trying to pour that stuff into that dam, it's just not happening. And then I took some dollar store epoxy, tried to add to it a little bit, and that started to cook it off a little bit faster. So while I'm trying to mix it in the cup, this whole thing's cooking off. And it is cooking off like right now. So anyway, this is supposed to set in 5-10 minutes. The other stuff I have no idea, so I'm gonna let it sit for a while, probably a couple hours, and see what she looks like. But I think for me, from now on, I'm just going to use the 2-part self-leveling resins. I'll spend a little bit of money on those. That way I've guaranteed that when I'm doing a water pour, that it's going to come out correctly. And I don't have to second guess myself, is this too much, too little? But on this, I did the amount of sepia ink I put in was 3 drops. And that gave a nice tint to the water. And I use water in a light term. But I'm not sure if you can see it very well. But it gave it that nice murky brownish yellow color. So I'm really happy with the tint in that. But all in all, I think this turned out. But it's a good learning lesson. This pouring resins and stuff for me is still new. I've never really messed with them too much. I've always used the water effects from Woodland Scenics. So, well, and there we have it, all nice and cured up. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think for moving forward, not going to mess with the epoxies. For me anyway. The material I was using before is self-levels, and yes, it's a longer wait time, but the end result I think is better than the speed. So with that in mind, I'm just going to stay with that. No, it was a good learning experience. I've learned quite a bit. Like the other 2 videos, these actually are prototypes, and I've got I'm going to be making quite a bit of terrain with this stuff. My play area on my table is about a 3-foot by 5-foot. I'm just trying to suss out how many of each piece I'm going to need to do that, and I'll update videos accordingly as I've got that sort of hammered out. But I have something in mind for another video. It's actually a location tile. And I actually kind of had started sketching this the other night of what I think it would look like, and yeah, I'm excited to try to get that put together. I think I'll probably do that for next week, or within the next week or so, since I've already got it in my head, and it won't leave. Anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found anything useful or any questions or anything, please let me know. Until then, you all take care, and I will see you in the next video. All right, bye now.